My wife laughed at me at a party and was always against my dream job, but then I got a chance. My name is Caleb Thompson, and I'm 35 years old. For the past 9 years, I've worked as a systems analyst at a regional tech support firm. It's not particularly glamorous or exciting work, but it's stable and pays well enough to live comfortably. I never imagined I'd end up in IT long term. I actually went to college to study architecture. I had ambitions once. Big ones. Urban renewal projects, sustainable development, the kind of designs that could change how people live. But dreams don't always hold up when life applies pressure. I met Lydia, my wife, when we were both undergraduates. She was majoring in business marketing and was as driven as they come. She had plans, and she wasn't shy about them. "I'll be a director by 30, she once told me during a late-night study session. And, to her credit, she did exactly that. When we graduated, she landed a position at a sleek marketing firm known for its aggressive growth and stylish office space. They had a kombucha bar, exposed brick walls, and weekly networking mixers. Meanwhile, I took a short-term IT support job to help with bills while I figured things out. That short-term job quietly became permanent. My architectural sketches gathered dust in a drawer while Lydia's career flourished. At first, I didn't mind. We were a team, or so I thought. Lydia promised that once she made senior account manager, we'd turn our focus toward my career. "We'll get you back into school," she said. "There's time for both of us." But that promotion came and went. Then another. Each time, she'd say, "Let's just wait until the next quarter." I'm almost there. The next quarter turned into next year, and next year became silence. She made more money than me, considerably more, and that difference started to show up in the choices she made for our life. She picked out all the furniture for our apartment, calling my tastes dorm room leftovers. My gaming setup was pushed into the corner of the spare bedroom, which she claimed as her office even though she rarely used it. Once, I tried hanging one of my old architecture sketches in the hallway, a perspective drawing of a reimagined park from a class project. I came home the next day to find it gone, replaced with a framed quote about hustle culture. "It just didn't match the aesthetic," she said. "It looked unfinished." That was a recurring theme. Things I cared about were unfinished or unpolished. My wardrobe. My ideas. My hobbies. She'd say it with a smile, often in front of others, as if it were a charming joke. Then came the night of her company's annual celebration, her first since being promoted to director of client partnerships. A black tie affair at a downtown hotel that looked more like a museum than an event space. Glass walls, floating staircases, and modern art I couldn't make sense of. I spent an hour trying to tie my tie, feeling like a kid playing dress up. "Caleb, are you seriously still getting ready?" Lydia called from the bedroom. Her tone had that edge I'd grown used to, impatience wrapped in politeness. "Almost," I replied, straightening the new suit I'd bought just for the occasion. It was the most expensive thing I'd ever worn, and I still felt like a fraud in it. On the drive over, she gave me her usual pre-event script. "Remember, mention your project management certification if anyone asks what you do. And maybe hold back on the sci-fi references tonight. Not everyone wants to hear about alternate timelines and asteroid engineering, okay?" I nodded silently. We arrived, and Lydia was instantly in her element. Handshakes, smiles, casual jokes. I tried to keep up, smiling, nodding, holding her drink while she networked. I recognized a few people from past events but didn't know their names. Eventually, we ended up talking with her boss, Richard, and the company's CEO, Margaret. They congratulated Lydia on her leadership of a recent campaign that exceeded expectations. "You really brought in results," Margaret said warmly. "The way you handled the Emerson account? Exceptional work." Lydia was radiant. "Thank you. I believe it's important to take bold steps. There's too much complacency in our industry." And then Richard brought up the company retreat. "Lydia was a force on that climbing wall," he said to me. "You two hiked together?" Before I could respond, Lydia laughed loudly. "Oh, Caleb? He gets dizzy on the second rung of a ladder. He's more of the ground crew." A few polite chuckles followed. My ears went warm. "Not everyone needs to be an adventurer," Margaret offered gently. Lydia wasn't done. "Remember the mouse in our apartment last month?" she said, turning to the group. I came home to find him standing on the dining table with a broom like it was a weapon. More laughter. I took a long drink of sparkling water and wished I could vanish. That wasn't even how it had happened. I'd been startled, sure, but I'd taken care of it by the time she got home. But her version got the laughs. When the conversation moved on, I slipped away to the balcony. The cold air helped. I leaned against the railing and looked out at the city, wondering how I'd ended up as the punchline in my own life. I thought about the years I'd spent in quiet support. The birthdays she missed because of client dinners. The holidays where I attended her work parties alone in a corner. I thought I was being a good partner, being patient. Maybe I'd just been disappearing. Mind if I join you? I turned and saw Richard holding 2 bottles of water. He handed me one. Thanks, I said, unsure of what else to offer. You know, he said, Lydia mentioned once you studied architecture. That's something I've always found interesting. I blinked. She did? Yeah. Said you had a real eye for design. I've been thinking of redesigning a property out by the lake. Maybe you could take a look at some of the ideas. I was stunned. It's been a while. I'm not exactly a professional anymore. He shrugged. Fresh eyes see things experts miss all the time. No pressure. Just think about it. Lydia came out to find us a few minutes later. Her eyes narrowed slightly when she saw us talking. There you are. Everyone was wondering where you went. I needed some air, I said. Well, Margaret's wife was asking about you. You should come back in. I think I'm going to head home, I replied, surprising even myself. What? Caleb, we've only been here an hour. I'm not feeling well. Her expression shifted. This is an important night for me. You're going to leave because of a stomach ache? No, I said. Because I don't feel like being laughed at tonight. She looked like she was about to argue but stopped. I took that moment to walk past her. Richard caught my arm briefly. If you want to talk about design, he said, handing me a business card, let me know. I didn't reply. I just nodded and walked to the elevator, the business card clenched in my hand. That night, the apartment was silent when I returned. I hung my jacket by the door, undid the collar of my shirt, and walked straight to the bathroom. The hot shower stung, but I welcomed it. I let the water run long after it had turned lukewarm, trying to wash away not just the evening, but the years of small slights, the lingering embarrassment, the aching sense of having lost something essential. Sleep was elusive. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying that balcony moment again and again, Lydia's laugh, the way her words shrunk me in front of people who barely knew me. It wasn't the first time. It just happened to be the first time I couldn't ignore it. I thought back to all the times she'd casually corrected me in conversations, reframed my interests as childish quirks, called me sweet but kind of aimless when she thought I wasn't listening. I'd let it happen. I told myself it was harmless. But slowly, I'd stopped showing her my sketches. I'd stopped dreaming out loud. I realized something I hadn't admitted even to myself. I was deeply, achingly tired. Tired of minimizing who I was to make room for her ambition. Tired of the one-sided trade-offs. Tired of feeling like I didn't belong in my own life. Lydia didn't come home that night. A text came in around 6:15 a.m. Stayed at Jen's. Needed space. We'll talk later. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a question. It was a statement of intent, like everything she did. I didn't respond. Instead, I called in sick. I never did that. I think my supervisor was so shocked, he didn't even ask if I was all right. I made a cup of coffee and pulled the old plastic bin out from the back of the closet, the one labeled archive. It contained everything I had packed away after college. Sketchbooks. Notes. A USB drive with old models. It smelled like dust and past versions of myself. I laid them out on the dining table. Some were rough, sure, but there was a spark in them and energy I hadn't felt in years. I ran my fingers over a campus design project I once won recognition for. I remembered how alive I'd felt presenting it. I hadn't thought about that feeling in so long. On impulse, I pulled out the card Richard had given me. It felt heavier now. Not because of its weight, but because of what it implied. I created a new email account and, after agonizing for an hour, I sent him a message. Hi Richard, this is Caleb from the event. If the offer to talk design is still open, I'd be glad to meet. Thanks again for the conversation. His reply came less than 20 minutes later. Glad to hear from you, Caleb. Steel Beam Cafe, 3 p.m. tomorrow? My treat. I was still holding the phone when Lydia came home that evening. Her tone was calm, rehearsed. I didn't expect you to leave last night, she said as she set her purse down. I had to do a lot of damage control. I didn't reply. She interpreted my silence as an opening. I might have taken the joke too far, she admitted, glancing at me. But you know how these events go. Everyone teases their spouses. It's part of the charm. I didn't feel very charmed. She sighed. Are we really going to let one night define everything? I've worked hard to get to where I am, and you've always supported that. I thought we were on the same page. I turned to face her. We were. Until I realized I'd been reading a completely different chapter. The conversation ended there, suspended in the sort of quiet that doesn't resolve, just thickens. The next day, I arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early. It was modern but warm, with exposed steel beams and local artists' work lining the walls. Richard was already there, dressed down in a navy sweater, sipping something dark from a ceramic mug. Caleb, he said, standing to shake my hand. I appreciate you coming. I sat down and handed him my sketchbook. He flipped through the pages slowly, thoughtfully. You did these in college? Yes. I almost had an internship lined up before life changed. These are good, he said. Better than good. There's thought in these lines. And originality. You weren't trying to imitate anyone. That's rare. I felt a strange warmth in my chest, validation I hadn't realized I'd craved. We talked for nearly 2 hours. I told him how I'd wound up in IT. How architecture had slowly become something I used to be interested in. He listened without judgment, occasionally jotting notes on a napkin. I won't make false promises, he said finally. But my team's working on a mixed-use downtown development. Early phases. We've got professionals on it, but sometimes an outside view catches what we miss. I'd like you to look at the current plans and give me your honest critique. I'm not licensed, I reminded him. You're not being asked to stamp blueprints. Just give input. Think of it as a consulting favor. No strings unless you want more later. He handed me a flash drive. Create a fresh email. Keep this off your work computer. And maybe off Lydia's radar, for now. I nodded slowly. I didn't want to start hiding things, but something in me understood what he meant. This was mine. That night, Lydia returned home with a new kind of energy. She asked about my day. She complimented the dinner I made. It was all off somehow, like she was reading from a new script. I answered politely but kept the flash drive in my coat pocket. At midnight, I opened my laptop and made a folder titled Foundations. I clicked through the development files. Renderings, site assessments, traffic studies. I read until my eyes blurred. Then I opened a blank document and started writing notes. By 3 a.m., I had 3 pages of observations and 2 concept sketches in progress. Lydia came to the office door at some point, rubbing her eyes. What are you working on? She asked, her tone neutral. Just something personal, I said, not looking up. For work? Not quite. She hovered, then left. I realized something had shifted. For once, she was the one on the outside of something I was building. And I liked how that felt. Over the next 2 weeks, my evenings transformed. Instead of zoning out in front of the TV or sitting through another one of Lydia's recaps of meetings and marketing forecasts, I found myself drawn to the dining table, which had slowly turned into my workstation. Architectural sketches, design concepts, printouts from the project files Richard had given me, they began to reclaim the surface. I called it my desk, for the first time in years. Each night, I'd sit for hours analyzing the plans for the downtown mixed-use development. The structure was ambitious, aiming to revitalize a neglected city block. But I saw issues. The initial layout created a wind tunnel effect through the main plaza. Certain angles caused awkward shadowing that would make the retail space feel dark and cold during key afternoon hours. The parking structure placement created unnecessary bottlenecks for foot traffic. And then I saw the opportunity, a reimagined courtyard that could anchor the site with a green communal space. I spent 3 evenings designing it. It wasn't revolutionary, but it respected the site, embraced flow, and added value. I sent my feedback from the anonymous email account. Within 12 hours, Richard replied. This is exactly the kind of thinking we needed. Can you come in Wednesday at 1 p.m. to walk the team through your suggestions? I froze for a moment. This wasn't just a favor anymore. It was a meeting. A real one. I agreed, then spent 2 full nights preparing. I scanned and printed my drawings, rehearsed how I'd present them, and even researched common concerns in urban mixed-use development to anticipate questions. Lydia noticed my focus. One evening over dinner, she tried to get information out of me. You've been busy lately, she said, trying to keep the tone casual. Is it a new project at work? A side project, I replied, equally neutral. What kind of side project? She pressed. Something I'm exploring, I said, not elaborating. She narrowed her eyes. Is this about the other night? Are you trying to prove a point? No. I'm trying to remember what it feels like to do something that matters to me. She didn't respond to that. She just went quiet. And stayed that way for most of the night. Wednesday arrived, and I dressed carefully, not in one of the suits Lydia had picked out for me, but in an outfit that felt like mine. Clean lines, good fit, simple colors. I left the house before she returned from her morning jog. The firm's office was a stark contrast to my own workplace. Glass walls, modular spaces, open design, everything spoke of a company used to creating, not just reacting. Richard met me in the lobby, gave me a reassuring smile, and guided me to the conference room. Waiting there were 5 people, 2 senior designers, a project lead, a sustainability advisor, and a woman named Eleanor, who introduced herself as the managing partner. Caleb's the one who solved our courtyard problem, Richard said as he introduced me. I offered a quiet nod and got started. The meeting lasted nearly 90 minutes. I walked them through the weaknesses I saw in the original design, the flow concerns, and the issues with light and pedestrian access. I presented alternatives, handed out printouts, even sketched on the digital whiteboard when a question came up about column placement. The tone in the room shifted halfway through. I wasn't just a curiosity anymore. They were listening. Asking follow-ups. Challenging me like a peer. When it ended, Eleanor approached me. You're self-taught, she asked. I studied architecture in college, I said. But didn't finish. Family situation. I shifted to IT and stayed there. Well, your perspective is strong. That courtyard concept alone will probably increase foot traffic by 20%. Clients like that. She handed me a card. Let's talk again soon. I left the building feeling weightless. For the first time in years, I felt like I had taken up space in a room and belonged there. That night, Lydia came home late. She was quieter than usual, but observant. I could feel her watching me as I packed my sketches into a new folio and backed up my digital files. What exactly are you doing with all this? She asked. I met with a firm, I replied. They're interested in more of my input. Her brow furrowed. You met with Richard's company? I froze. How do you know that? I had a meeting with Margaret today. She mentioned that someone had contributed a design element to the downtown project and that Richard had brought them in independently. I connected the dots. I said nothing. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. Because I didn't want you to talk me out of it, I said honestly. Talk you out of it? Caleb, I support you. No, I said firmly. You support a version of me that stays in your shadow. One who keeps his hobbies tidy and his ambitions in the background. That's not true. Isn't it? When have you ever asked what I wanted to do with my life, besides helping you climb higher? She didn't answer. I'm not trying to hurt you, Lydia, I said. But I'm done being invisible. The next few days were tense. Lydia alternated between feigned support and thinly veiled frustration. She made comments about the timing of my sudden ambition, about how people in her office were speculating. I said nothing. Then came the text from Richard. Our team would like to meet you again Friday, same room, 2 p.m. I agreed. That evening, Lydia sat beside me on the couch. So, is this architecture thing really going somewhere? It might. You're not qualified. I wasn't qualified to fix your Wi-Fi either, but I did. She frowned. You're not being serious. I am. Because every time I try to talk about this like it matters, you remind me that I don't have a license or a degree. And I'm telling you, people are listening to what I have to say anyway. This is about proving something, isn't it? No, I said quietly. It's about reclaiming something. The next day, I packed my drawings, took the elevator up to the 24th floor of the firm's building, and stepped into the future I had once shelved. The second meeting felt different from the first. This time, they introduced me not as a guest, but as a consultant. That word, simple as it was, carried weight. It was the first time in nearly a decade anyone had referred to me with a title that implied expertise. I presented my follow-up sketches, offered refinements to my courtyard concept based on their last round of feedback, and made a few observations about traffic movement that even the logistics engineer had missed. It wasn't just received, it was appreciated. Eleanor, the firm's managing partner, approached me afterward. Caleb, she said, you have a way of seeing potential in spaces most people gloss over. It's not just creative, it's strategic. That's valuable. I thanked her, still surprised by how natural it felt to be in this setting. Then she added something that caught me off guard. We have another project breaking ground in a few months. Different scope, historic restoration. We'd like to bring you on in a more official capacity, if you're open to it. I blinked. I'm honored. But I still don't have credentials. Talent doesn't always follow credentials, she said with a small smile. And you're already proving your value. That night, I sat at my desk with the window cracked open, letting in the soft hum of city traffic. I wasn't thinking about Lydia, or even the whirlwind of these past few weeks. I was thinking about my 17-year-old self. The one who had sketched campus buildings during lunch breaks and stayed up late designing community spaces that had never been built. He would have been proud of me. I didn't tell Lydia about the second meeting. Not right away. But she found out the next day. She came home from work early, her face tight, her tone clipped. Jordan from operations called me into a meeting, she began, tossing her keys on the table. He wanted to know why I never disclosed that my husband was consulting on the downtown project. I stood up from my desk. I didn't think it was relevant. She stared at me. It reflects on me, Caleb. It looks like you used our relationship to get access. I didn't. Richard reached out to me based on my work. You know that. Well, they don't. They think I had a hand in it. That I'm influencing decisions. Then tell them the truth. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she poured a glass of water and leaned against the counter. They're auditing the Emerson account, she said finally. There were some discrepancies in the client metrics. Margaret's been asking questions. I raised my eyebrows. Are you saying they suspect you of falsifying results? She didn't deny it. They're just numbers. Projections. I was trying to make sure we stayed competitive. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Lydia, if those numbers were manipulated, it's not illegal. It's aggressive strategy. Is that what you tell yourself? Her expression hardened. You think you're better than me now? Because some firm gave you a project? Let's not forget who's paid the bills these last 10 years. I shook my head. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? Punishing me? Embarrassing me? I made a mistake at one event, and now you're parading around like you're some visionary. It's not about revenge, I said evenly. It's about respect. And realizing I've spent years burying the parts of myself that mattered most, because I thought that's what support looked like. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. The next morning, I got a message from Richard. We need to talk privately. Can you meet today? We met at the same cafe. He looked unusually serious. Lydia filed a complaint, he said. She's claiming I brought you on without transparency, that you've had access to confidential information. My stomach dropped. That's not true. I didn't even know about the project until you showed it to me. I created a new email, worked from home, never used our shared devices. He nodded. I believe you. But the firm's legal team needs documentation. Anything that shows your ideas came from your own process, not something you gleaned through her. I went home and began gathering everything: email timestamps, sketch dates, even backups of my notes with metadata. But I knew I needed something more conclusive. Then I remembered Lydia's journal. She had always kept one. Not emotional reflections, but a kind of professional diary. A log of goals, client meetings, strategies, her executive thoughts, she once called it. It felt wrong to even consider opening it. But she had accused me of something I hadn't done. If that journal contained evidence of her motives, or proof that I hadn't been her informant, it would clear me. That night, while she was out at what she claimed was a late yoga session, I found it tucked behind a stack of winter sweaters in her dresser. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. And there it was. Written just days earlier. If this architecture thing takes off for Caleb, it could threaten my standing. I'll need to spin it as internal favoritism before Margaret starts asking why he's even involved. I photographed the entry and closed the journal. I didn't confront her. I sent the evidence to Richard. 2 days later, Lydia was suspended pending an internal investigation. She came home in tears. I stood in the kitchen while she pleaded, first with guilt, then anger, then desperation. You've ruined me, she sobbed. This job was everything. Without it, I'm nothing. You're not nothing, I said. But maybe you should ask yourself why it feels that way. She stared at me, eyes full of something I couldn't define: regret, rage, maybe fear. "We can fix this," she whispered. "I'll go to therapy. I'll tell the firm I overreacted. I'll even help with your projects. Just, don't let them fire me." But I couldn't unsee the truth. Even now, her offer to support me was based on need, not love. She wasn't apologizing because she understood, she was begging because she was cornered. "I'm leaving," I said. "I've already found a temporary place. This isn't working anymore. You can't just walk away." "I already have." A week later, I moved into a small one-bedroom above a bookstore near the river. The firm offered me a formal contract as a design consultant. Eleanor introduced me at a team meeting as someone who sees what others miss. That single sentence rewrote a chapter of my identity. The apartment was small, but the desk was mine. So was the future. It's been 4 months. I'm finishing my architectural degree through an accelerated evening program. I still do IT part-time, but most of my hours now go toward design work. Lydia tried to reach out a few times. Emails, a voicemail. One was especially hard to hear. "I made mistakes. But I believed in you. I just didn't know how to show it." I didn't respond. I don't hate her. I don't wish her harm. But I finally learned the difference between patience and silence. Between compromise and erasure. The greatest victory wasn't the consulting role or the design recognition. It was standing in a room again, head high, voice clear, and knowing I belonged. And to anyone who's reading this and feels like they've faded into the background of their own life, you are not selfish for wanting more. You are not wrong for dreaming again. You are not too late. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.